right, so the first thing we are going to do is create a background for our Chinese vases. So you are going to be choosing either hot colors or cold colors for this. So remember that hot colors are colors that make us think of hot things like fire or the sun. So those are colors like reds, oranges, yellows, and pink. Cold colors are things that make us feel cold or think of cold things like water and ice. So those are colors like purple, blue, and green. So we're gonna be doing a wet on wet technique for this. So that means we're gonna be painting wet paint on wet paper. So we're gonna be doing little sections of this at a time. So you're not gonna be doing your whole paper at once. So you are going to paint some water in just one part of your paper first. So it can be anywhere on your paper. I'm just kind of starting at the top, and you can kind of see where my paper is a little bit shiny, and that shows you where the water is. So then you're gonna choose hot or cold colors. I think for mine, I'm gonna choose cold colors. So I'm gonna start with my different shades of blue and purple and green, and I'm just gonna paint right on top of that water in little spots of color. So you can see, because my paint is wet and my paper is wet, it helps the paint spread together. It makes that really cool kind of tie-dye effect. So you're just gonna keep on painting with your hot or cold colors. Remember, you're just choosing hot or cold, you're not doing both until you do not see any more white spaces in that area. Right, so I have filled up this section where I painted water, so then I'm gonna move to the next spot. So I'm gonna start the same way, paint water first. And if you kind of mix into what you already painted, that's all right, because we're trying to cover our whole paper. We're just doing little areas at a time. Then I'm gonna do the same thing all over again. So I just paint my spots of color onto the water. Okay, and once again, I'm trying really hard to cover my white spots. If you have some spots that need help blending together, you can take some water on your brush and just kind of mix them around. All right, so you're gonna keep repeating that with water first and then paint all the way across your paper. All right, so once your whole paper is filled with either cold colors or hot colors, then you are going to set this on the drying rack, and we will move on to making your vase. A white piece of paper, and I also have some of these examples that you can use for ideas for your vase. So just like we made with our African masks, you need to fold your paper in half to make your vase symmetrical. You're gonna have to choose first though, what type of vase do you want? Vases that look like this are really tall and skinny, but this type of vase is more wide and short. So if you want your vase to be wide and short, you need to fold the hamburger way. Or if you want your vase to be tall and skinny, you need to fold the hot dog way. I think I'm gonna make my vase kind of more like this, which I think is tall. So I'm going to fold the hot dog way. Next, I need to find where the open and the closed side is. So on the left side, I have open, closed side is on the right. So I'm actually gonna flip that around and draw my vase on the closed side. Remember what happens if you draw on the open side. When you open it up, it'll just be two halves. It will not be a symmetrical vase. So make sure that you are drawing on the closed side. Okay, you do not have to copy these, but they are there for you if you want ideas. I really like how this one is, but I also like how this wide open mouth is more open instead of kind of going in and out. So I think I'm gonna combine these two. So first I'm gonna start with the top of my vase,
And then this one goes out. I think I'm gonna make mine go in and maybe down a little bit. And then this is pretty round, so I'm gonna curve mine out to the sides so it's nice and big. In, and then the bottom of my vase goes across. So now when I cut this out and open it up, it should be exactly the same on both sides. So I'm gonna grab my scissors and go ahead and cut while it is closed like this. Okay, so now when I open it up, it's exactly the same on both sides, which means it's symmetrical. Next, I'm gonna draw some designs with my Mr. Sketch markers. Remember, these vases are made with cobalt, which is a blue pigment. So I'm only looking for blue Mr. Sketch. So this box has dark blue and it has light blue. So I really only need one of each, dark blue and light blue, or you could do only light blue or only dark blue. It's up to you. So all the other colors, put them aside so I can use these two. Now this is just like when we drew our snowflakes. We're gonna draw first and then paint over them with water. So look at your designs, get some ideas, or make up your own. I really like this one with that kind of like castle-y, wavy kind of looking line. So I think I'm gonna put that in the center. And I'm gonna go ahead and draw some lines for that to fit in. Okay, so I'm gonna try really hard on my designs to make it nice and detailed. I'm gonna fast forward this so that you can see my results. Don't forget that all of these designs are based off of nature. That was a really big part of Chinese culture. So they've got animals, whether it's mythical or real. They also have waves, which means water, and flowers. So now that I've got some space in the middle, I'm gonna decide what kind of natural symbol I wanna choose for my vase. Also, notice I'm not coloring anything in, just do outlines because we're gonna paint over them to fill in those spaces. Okay, my design is complete and I have filled up my space really well. I don't have just one tiny drawing in the middle and a couple designs on the top and bottom. I have used my entire vase with interesting details, and so should you. Okay, next I'm gonna use my plain water, we don't need paint, in a plain brush to wake up those marker lines with the water. So I'm just gonna paint on top of my lines. This is just like when we did our snowflakes. I'm not going back and forth, back and forth. I'm just tracing my lines with my paintbrush. Trace those lines, pretend your brush is like a Sharpie or another marker. You just gotta trace on top and let the marker work its magic. Okay, so the longer you let this sit, the more the marker will start to spread out. So you can kind of see it happening right in here. But I'm just gonna let this dry and let it kind of do its thing. So once you've painted over all of your designs with water, then it's time to put it on the drying rack and start cleaning up. All right, second grade, so now your background should be dry. So I painted a cold color background and I'm going to glue on my symmetrical Chinese vase somewhere near the bottom of the paper. So you don't want it to be in the middle, make sure it's down low so you have room for your cherry blossoms. So when you glue it on, make sure you put dots of glue around the entire edge of your vase. If you don't do the entire edge, it's not gonna stick on very well. So I've got it on the edge of my vase. Then I'm gonna position it on my paper. Okay, and then flip it over. Mine's not sticking very well, so I gotta give it a good massage on the back. Okay, so now my vase is stuck to my background. I'm going to look for a brown oil pastel. This is gonna be for the branches of my cherry blossoms. When you draw your branches, you want to make sure you are starting at the top of the vase and you're making some kind of curved and sometimes straight lines, not all the way up to the edge of your paper, but you want it to be tall enough that it's not like a little tiny baby branch. So I'm gonna make just a few branches sticking out. Also, you want to make sure that you're pressing hard and you are going back and forth on your branch so that it doesn't look really light and wimpy. So if I don't press hard enough, my branch is just gonna look like this. So this is when I'm pressing hard, this is when I don't press hard enough. So I need to go back over that branch and make sure it's nice and dark. On the ends of your branches, you can turn it into a letter Y. That will make it look more like a realistic branch. If you want to add more small branches, just add another little one sticking off the side. You can also overlap your branches. So remember, when we overlap, we cross behind or in front, and that will look like it's even more realistic, and it will look like the vase is full of cherry blossom branches. Okay, so I like that amount of branches, so now I'm going to move on to the blossoms. To paint cherry blossoms, you're gonna start with pink, white, and red paint because those are all three colors that we saw in the blossoms. So when I actually paint my blossoms, I'm not gonna be using the tip of my brush like we usually do. We're actually gonna be stamping it like this to make a petal shape. So let me show you what I mean on my actual painting. So first I'm gonna load up my brush with some pink and some white. So I've got both on there. Then let's try this one right here. So I'm going to stamp my brush, stamp it 5 times. 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you stamp your brush, it looks more like a realistic flower petal. It kind of makes that triangle shape. So then you can experiment. Let's see what happens when we have lots of pink and just a little bit of white. Let's try that. So stamp. This is a brighter pink flower. So every flower should have 5 petals. 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm gonna fill up all of those ends of my branches with cherry blossoms. Okay, so now all of the tops of my branches have a cherry blossom, but I see a lot of empty space on my actual brown branches. So I'm gonna go back in with some paint and put some blossoms on the actual branch. If you wanna paint just a little bud so it's not fully bloomed, you could do just one stamp like that. So go in and fill up the rest of your area. Make sure you have lots of cherry blossoms so it looks like it's nice and full. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. I like how much I have. Now, if you want to have some petals that are sort of falling down, you could do that too. So just do one little stamp to look like some petals are falling down or kind of drifting off of the branches. Now that all of my flowers are finished, I'm gonna use my red paint to paint the little center of the flower. So now I'm gonna use the tip of my brush. This is like normal painting, and I'm just gonna paint a little letter U or a little dot. Okay, so just kind of like dot it in, paint just a little stroke of paint for the center. Okay, my flowers are finished. Now I'm gonna make a table for my vase to sit on, and I'm gonna do a little shadow on the vase so it looks more 3D. So for the table, you can pick any color of pastel that you want, but you wanna make sure it's not too similar to your background. So if I choose purple for my table, it's probably just gonna blend into my paper. Same thing if I choose blue. So I'm gonna just do a brown table, and I'm going to draw a line where my table goes. So about right there, and notice I did not draw on top of my vase because the table is behind the vase. Then I'm going to color it in really, really thick. So let me show you the difference. This is nice and thick oil pastel. If you don't color it in thick enough, you can't even really see your table. So you want to make sure you're pressing hard enough and you're covering up all of your background. Okay, now I'm going to switch from oil pastels. So oil pastels are more like a oily crayon, and I'm gonna switch to chalk pastels. Chalk pastels is just like regular chalkboard chalk, except it's brighter. So the difference is these are more of a round shape. These are more of a square shape. Okay, so the oil pastels are for the table, and the chalk pastels are gonna be for the shadow. So I'm gonna look for a black chalk pastel, and I see that it's a square shape, so I'm good to go. Okay, your shadow goes on one side of your vase. It does not matter which side you choose. I'm gonna choose this side, and I'm gonna trace a pretty thick line going on the edge of my vase. So I'm gonna just kind of fill it in a little bit. And it doesn't look like a shadow yet, but we're going to blend it so it does look like a shadow. So I have it going all the way down the side of my vase, and I'm gonna do a little bit at the top. Okay, so I'm gonna take my finger and just gently blend my shadow so that it starts to make my vase look really round. So I wanna really make sure I'm covering up the edge of this paper, because if I don't, it won't really look like it's realistic. Okay, and then a little bit on this side. Alrighty,